Welcome back to the Table Rush Talk Show, where we dive deep into the world of entrepreneurship, marketing, and personal growth. I'm your host, Mischa Zvagensov, and today I have an inspiring conversation with Gregory Benedikt, an ICF-certified coach who helps people discover happiness and fulfillment beyond financial success. Gregory shares his journey from a high-powered finance career to becoming a coach who lives by the motto, live a story worth telling. We talk about bold actions, embracing fear, and his unique 100 Days of Rejection challenge. This episode is packed with practical insights for us heart-centered entrepreneurs looking to align our lives with our deepest passions. Listen in, learn, and enjoy. Greg, welcome to the show.
Misha, thanks so much for having me.
Indeed. Well, first off, is it Greg or Gregory, or does it matter?
My incredibly unhelpful answer is that they're both great.
Okay, good. Because I was looking at all your .coms and all your stuff everywhere, and it's Gregory. It's very Gregory centric. So I was like, uh-oh, this could be a yeah, go ahead.
So a little bit behind that is that I went by Greg my whole life. And when I quit my job in finance, when I made a hard left turn, when I reinvented myself, I felt like I also needed to change something about my name. So I started going by Gregory. And I went by Gregory professionally. I have been for the past 4 years. But now I'm at the point where I'm comfortable in the shift. I've assumed that new identity, and all the people closest to me call me Greg. So now I'm back to the point where it doesn't really matter.
Love it. Love it. You've had the complete transformation and you're completely open-minded. So I've been sorting through your content and everybody can go to gregoryrussellbenedict.com, gregoryrussellbenedict.com and follow along. And then I'll obviously have that in the show notes. And Benedict is spelled Benedikt. Is that the traditional spelling of Benedict, or is that
It's German Austrian. It's slightly different. It's not like Eggs Benedict. It's the K instead of the C. My
love it?
nickname in college was Eggs Benedict, Greg's Benedict.
You've answered this question before.
Yes.
Yes. So anyway, so anybody listening, watching, go to gregoryrussellbenedict.com. You can follow along. And then yeah, so I've been sorting through your content. You have a great masterclass that you do or workshop that you do that's all about transformation. Um, the I'm going to give everybody the link at some point. It'll definitely be in the show notes. But the Are you ready to transform your life? This PDF that's got 100 days of getting rejected and being bold and all this crazy stuff that you're up to. I'm almost like, where the heck do we start? But what I'd like to start with is we are friends um, through the Feel Good Fridays. That's a group that you and I go to on Fridays. It's here in Encinitas, California. Bunch of heart-centered entrepreneurs, small business owners, just a great networking group. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I love that. Non-networking networking. It's really more about connecting than networking.
Yeah. And heart-centered for sure, right? Like all of us are just there to connect, serve, and just open.
We lead with the heart, not the business card.
Yeah, it's so good. So, every now and then we get to say who we are and what we do. And I love when you have your 15-second here's my name, here's what I do. So go, do it.
Yes, yes. So the way I've been approaching this recently, it used to be way more complicated, way more wordy. And now I simply ask a question. I say, hey, if you're listening to this right now, you know the saying, money can't buy happiness? People are like, yeah, I've heard that before. Most people are like, oh, yeah, money can't buy happiness. Well, I'm a coach and I work with people who have found out for themselves that that statement is true. They have been successful. They've had the money and they think it's going to fix the hole inside of them. They think it's going to make them happy. They think it's going to make them fulfilled. And yet they get the paycheck. They're successful on paper and they're still feeling empty. So I help people who have this problem, who are successful on paper, but feeling empty inside. I help them get the things that money can't buy. Things like happiness, meaning, fulfillment, aliveness. That's the thing I'm leaning into recently is like, isn't that what we all want? To feel alive? And that's why so many of the things I do in my own life for fun is things that get me out of my comfort zone, that are bold, that are scary, that make my palms sweat. And I call this whole process living a story worth telling. It's my personal philosophy, so much so that I got it tattooed on my arm in Japan. It's right here on the inner part of my arm. And it's my life philosophy, and it's also my coaching philosophy. I believe that the way we get these things that we want most is through having the courage to follow our dreams and take bold action.
I love that. So live a story worth telling. Yes.
Yes,
And did you
yes.
say live a life worth? Did you have another thing within that? Live a life worth as well, or
It,
was I imagining that? Sorry. Yeah.
I love where you were going with that. It's live a story worth telling is the phrase I use, but it's live a life worth living, find meaning, all of the things. You can hear it any way that you want to receive it, but it's just this essence of, and I'll tell you where it comes from. Originally, the genesis comes from the top five regrets of the dying. So it turns out that at the end of life, most people have some regrets. And I see the look on your face. I'm sure you'll have something to say about this. Not only do people get to the end of their life and have regrets, but they have the same five regrets. This woman, Bronnie Ware, she was an end of life caregiver and she interviewed over 500 of her patients on their deathbed. And the number one thing people said that they regretted is, I wish I would have had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expect of me. And that's at the essence of living a story worth telling. It's living the life that you want to live, not what your parents want you to do, your teachers want you to do, society wants you to do. And so that's at its core. And that single sentence, the number one regret of the dying, when I heard it for the first time, it punched me in the face. It absolutely reached out of the podcast I was listening to and slapped me around because it made me realize that I was doing just that. I was on a fast track to getting to the end of my life, working a job I hated, still partying, even though I didn't like partying anymore. I was just trying to be the people that I thought people wanted me to be. I was wearing this mask. And so it was taking off that mask and saying, I'm weird. I want to live this weird, outrageous lifestyle that sparked all of this for me.
That is so amazing. I am weird and I'm going to be weird. I'm going to embrace it. So, how you've got this finance job? Well, before we get into all that, I don't know where to go because one thing is there's so many coaches out there, so many healers out there, so many people out there talking this, I want to say rhetoric. Okay. And then I meet somebody like you. And when I met you, honestly, I was instantly like, oh, yeah, this guy is delivering on this promise that you're talking about. Right. And then, like, you're busy. You have an office. I was like, this dude's got an office. Like, he's got clients. He's legit. This is happening. He is helping transform people's lives. You've got a podcast studio. I don't know. Speak to that. Riff on that. What do you when I tell that to you? What comes to your mind?
First of all, thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm glad to hear that that is how you are perceiving me and what is being received because I think a lot about this. What is my it factor? What is the X factor? What makes me different? Because as you mentioned, there's 300 million coaches. Everyone and their mom is a coach or a healer or a guide. And I love it. I love that everyone wants to help others become the best version of themselves, realize their potential. But I realize that if I want to stand out in an industry that is commoditized, being a life coach, you are a can on the shelf next to all these other generic store-bought name brand cans. You have to do something different. And for me, it was leaning into being weird and outrageous and these things that I love. So an example of that is hard physical challenges, things that get me out of my comfort zone. And a point that illustrates this perfectly is I actually just sent it to you this morning. I redid my free guide, my free lead magnet PDF that I just give away because it used to be something around ikigai, which is this amazing Japanese concept of your life purpose, finding your reason for being. And I love it. It helped me a ton figure out what I wanted to do next. And it's super helpful and people always get value from it, but anyone can do that. Anyone can use this Japanese philosophy and take people through this exercise. So instead, what I changed my free lead magnet to, which we'll put in the show notes, is the number one lesson I learned from 100 days of getting rejected. And I recently wrapped up a 100-day challenge where for 100 days, I knocked on strangers' doors. I asked people at the grocery store, in the park, no one was safe. And I would ask them these outrageous things. And the reason why I'm shifting to this is because not everyone can do that. That is very unique to me. And when I say not everyone can do that, let me add a caveat. Everyone can do that. And I want everyone to do it, but most people aren't willing to subject themselves to that public humiliation, the terror, the sweaty palms, the amount of shirts I sweat through, being nervous to ask people things. And we can get into some of the takeaways and the stories from that, but that is where I'm at in my business journey and my coaching journey is trying to figure out what is the unique way that I can help people and how can I do it in a way that's fun, that's different, that when people meet me, they say, okay, this guy is doing the work. He's not just reciting what other wise coaches have said. He's really in the weeds with people doing it. And I think that's another thing that differentiates me is that everything I talk about, this whole philosophy of living a story worth telling, of taking bold action, I'm doing. And I'm terrified. And I'm not trying to show it in a sense of, oh, look at me, look at this cool thing I'm doing. It's like, watch me go ask this stranger if I can give them a piggyback ride while they shoot a basketball into a basketball hoop and see how awkward and terrifying it is.
This is amazing. Um, there's so many directions I want to go, but you have a podcast. It's called the Dare to Dream podcast, and it's with is does Vincent Van Patten still do that with you? Is it
He
you and
d-
him still, or
he
just you?
does. He does.
Okay,
He's one of my best friends in the whole world, and he's over in Tokyo, Japan. He's been living there for a year and a half. So we've kept the podcast alive despite him being across the world.
cool. And that focused on the Ikigai. It was like Ikigai stories or relating everything to the, if I'm saying that right, Ikigai, or am I saying that right or no? You're trying to like combine your stories with that philosophy, yeah?
The Dare to Dream podcast is all about what becomes possible when you have the courage to follow your dreams. So we
Yeah.
started it in July of 2020 when we both quit our corporate jobs. And we started it as an honest and unfiltered look into what is it actually like to one day quit your corporate job and have no idea what you want to do next. So the first like 35 episodes were just us talking, just going on about what we're going through, the unknown, the scariness. And then we started bringing guests on, and you're going to come on the podcast.
You're
And
right.
now I bring on people that are doing what they love. They decided at one point in their life that they wanted to, like I said, live a life true to themselves. And they took the hard turn into a more meaningful, heart-centered life. And it's not easy. So on the podcast, we always talk about what was it like? What was the low point? What was that moment? I have to share this story. I just had a guest on last night, and she was talking about how she used to have the BMW, the 5 bedroom house. And she said, one day in the middle of a cul-de-sac, I'm at a barbecue and someone hands me a Swedish meatball. And I say, this isn't my life. And so I love those moments, those existential crisis moments that are so hard to go through in real time, but that's where the growth and everything comes from.
I just got the chills as you said that. That was so good. Yeah, I can't wait to be on your show and talk about those moments for me. Um, I- you know, people ask me if I had all the money in the world, what would I be doing? And it's like, that's what I'd be doing right now. Like I am going after the things that when I'm on my deathbed, like, did I check the box? Right. And that can be different things for different people. Like, I want to do webinars and sell one to many. I just have my whole life wanted to do that. So I'm going to try. Right. And someone might go, well, that's asinine, but that's my thing. Your thing could be, I got to get to Iceland. I've been there. So I checked that off the box. But you know what I'm saying? So I'm assuming you help people find that thing. I don't want you to answer that right now. The riff on the podcast was I have people come on my podcast And I'm like, what's your anywhere you want me to guide people to? Oh yeah, here's my free thing, right? And so you said, oh yeah, here's my free thing. You gave me a couple that are really cool. So I'm always very skeptical when I get the free thing. I'm like, I can't wait to see what this is, you know?
Right.
And then oh my gosh, I was so pleasantly surprised when I got your free download that everybody can get when they click on the show notes. And it's that 100 days. It's your 100 days thing. What do you call it? Sorry.
The number one lesson I learned from 100 Days of Rejection.
Yes, everybody listening, watching, it is awesome and well done. So you got to click on it. That's where I was trying to get with all that. So the you said something very interesting, and I'm trying to find it now. It was you said, I mean, you've come to terms with, what's the unique way that you help people or how you can help people. And so answer that question. I was like, well, what is it? Let's like talk to me. Like, what's the unique way that you can help people?
The unique way that I help people is that if we work together, I am fully in your corner. The vision I have for my clients in the future, and I'm just starting to do this with current clients, is say Iceland, as you mentioned, is on your bucket list. We're going to go to Iceland. I'll meet you there. We're going to do these other things that you've said you've always wanted to do that you're scared of, and we're going to do it together. So I want to get out from behind the Zoom screen, from behind my coaching chair, and really fully be in people's lives as a coach, as a co-creator, as someone to hold their hand during the scary, hard things. Because and I'm going to give it away, but the number one lesson I learned from the 100 days of getting rejected and all of these other things I've done is that the universe rewards bold action. You don't have to have the answer. You don't need to know what is next. If you're stuck, it's okay. You just have to go do something bold and scary for you. And if you do that consistently, I believe that the universe says, wow, that person's really getting after it. That person's really trying. And every time in my own life that I've mustered up the courage to do something that I was scared of, I'm instantly rewarded. I met my girlfriend at a cafe by walking up to a table of her and her two friends and saying, hey, you're really cute, which probably means you have a boyfriend. But if you don't, here's my phone number. Like I was shaking. I think I blacked out during it, but that has brought me the best romantic relationship of my life. During the 100-day challenge, on day 4, I knocked on a stranger's door and I said, hi, my name's Gregory. Can I cannonball in your swimming pool? And after such an awkward silence, the guy's like, yeah, I guess. And I jump in his pool. We make a little Instagram video and it went viral. Like I'd never made any content on Instagram that people liked that much. And this one thing went viral because I was just being me and I was doing the things that scared me. And so the way that I help people is I help them identify which bold actions to take. And then so much of working with someone is the accountability, the support, and just getting them to take the bold action over and over and over again. And
Mm.
the 3 steps, I am trained by the ICF, which is a style of coaching that is very questions based. So when I'm with someone as a coach, I'm only asking questions, but I do have a framework that I take people through that helps them figure out, okay, what is the dream? How am I going to take action on this and what actions to take? And step number 1 is we define their dream. And I'll speak to that in a moment. Step number 2 is we create their commitment using this awesome thing called a commitment device. It's this cool psychological concept. And then number 3, simple, take bold action. You said you want to do this thing. You've been putting it off. You're going to feel really good after you do it. It's time to get out there and do it. And I'll do it with you.
Amazing. Um, the ICF certification, um, we can speak to that in a second. You said something right after that, um, before you were talking about the three-step process, but it was like almost the master framework that your three steps fit into. What was that again? Does that, go
I
ahead.
might be answering your question. It might be slightly different, but defining someone's dream is the most important thing. It's like,
Yeah.
what is your dream? And I actually broke down what does the word dream even mean? Because some people, I feel like the entrepreneur type hears dream and they're like, yeah, my dream is my biggest goal I'm working toward, and I'm actually taking steps on it. But a lot of people hear dream and it's this big pie in the sky concept. It's like, I want to win the lottery without ever buying a ticket or whatever it is. And so I broke down dream. And the way I define dream, the way I work with my clients on the word dream is three different ways to get to the same thing. It's what do you want to do right now, but you haven't had the courage to take action on yet? What do you know that you would regret not doing during your life? You kind of spoke to that earlier, Mischa, of making a list of all the things you know you need to do to minimize those regrets. And then the third one is similar to the first, but it's what have you been putting off until someday or one day? And these three questions you can ask yourself if you're listening to this, and that will give you so much insight into what your dream is. And the reason that you need to have a dream is because it's not the achievement of the dream, it's the pursuit of the dream, being on that journey, chasing your dreams, that you get the things that you want most that money can't buy. Things like fulfillment and meaning and a sense of feeling alive. If you could just go out and buy those things, then the rich and the famous would be happy. And yet most of them aren't.
Dude, a lot of them are on pills, medicating, dying of overdoses. We hear about rock stars, movie stars all the time, suicides. They're on whatever plethora of benzodiazepines or ketamine or God bless. It's those are tools that have a use, but a lot of people that seemingly have it all, like you just said, the wealth, the power, the fame, they're not happy and they oftentimes leap off of buildings, right?
And I think that's the most insidious part about happiness, fulfillment, meaning, these things that we want. I've learned a lot from Viktor Frankl talking about this, and that those things that we want, meaning, success, fulfillment, aliveness, those are byproducts. Those aren't things we can focus on directly. If you try and be happy, you're just like, I'm going to be so happy and I'm going to get all this happiness, it kind of eludes you. But if you focus on chasing after this thing that's meaningful, that's bigger than yourself, that feels like why you are on this planet, why you exist, then all of these other things just start to show up. And you said earlier, what would you do if you weren't getting paid for anything? In Mischa, my life, and I always feel strange sharing this because I can relate to the people who aren't feeling this because that was me 4 years ago. But I was driving home from the office Monday night at 7 p.m. and I was so happy. I was so happy because everything I do, podcasting, coaching, writing, I would be doing these things for free because I did do them for free at first. And it's such a blessing to get to work on the things that you feel like you're here to do and not work on someone else's schedule, on someone else's objectives. And I remember when I worked in finance, if I got home from the office at 7, I would be so sad. I would be resentful. I'd be like, sweet, I have like an hour before I go to bed. And I just wasted it working on someone else's dream. And now I get home and I'm just like, wow, what a day.
So good. Let's go back to that time. So did you go to the right college, prep schools, things like that? Tell me about your life leading up to finance and yeah.
Yeah, it's super interesting because I've recently been trying to peel back the layers on why finance. Why did I like it? Why did I want to go into it? Because finance was my dream job. So I graduated from Cal Poly up in San Luis Obispo, and they have a really good finance program. They have a really good, he retired, but there was a finance teacher named Gorman, and he was infamous. I compare him to, if anyone listening has seen the movie Whiplash, I compare him to the bald instructor. I think he's at Juilliard, who is sadistic and crazy, but super talented. And if you can get a compliment from him, you feel on top of the world. So that was my college finance experience. Super hard classes, absolutely grinding. But when I did well in the classes, I felt smart. I felt validated. I felt like I was making Gorman proud. And I go and think that finance is my dream job. And what's funny is I actually didn't go into finance directly. I took a misstep and accidentally became an internal auditor, which was hilariously horrible. I did that for a year and then realized, okay, this is not it. So then I went more traditional finance. And I moved down to San Diego. I was up in San Francisco for auditing, moved down to San Diego, worked at a private equity real estate investment fund, doing financial modeling all day, every day. And about a year and a half in, I just looked up and I took a look at my life and I said, is this it? Is this really what my life has amounted to? I sit behind a computer screen for 12 hours a day and crunch numbers in Excel. And I felt so empty. I felt like my life didn't matter. I wasn't making a difference. And I felt like I was capable of more. And
Mm.
so enter the number one regret of the dying, enter another few quotes and ideas that found me at the right time. And in June of 2020, I quit my job. I had no idea what I wanted to do next. And that was the first time in my life that I fully stepped into the unknown, which is this terrifying place. And as humans, we're really bad at being in uncertainty. But from the unknown, that's where the magic starts to happen.
Mm.
2 weeks after I quit my job, I meet a stranger on the internet and we start a nonprofit. The nonprofit starts getting successful. We partner with the International Coaching Federation, this big coaching company, and we paired professional leadership coaches with underserved high school students. We
Mm.
wanted to make coaching, personal development, all these things that are really expensive, accessible to everyone. And we wanted to bring it directly to the people who needed it most, which at the time was high school students in the Houston International School District, because that was the worst performing in the nation. So for a year and a half, I'm building this. It's my first time ever being a co-founder, ever trying to make something on my own without a boss, without someone telling me what to do. And I learned so much about myself. The biggest thing I learned is that I love coaching. I had never heard of coaching besides sports before this. And then I was introduced to this career where you get to genuinely care about people, ask them questions to help peel back the layers on their own unique answers and help them achieve their goals. And I was like, yes, that is it. And so after about 18 months of the nonprofit, I pivoted away. My business partner, he's still doing it. And I went back to school and I went to University of San Diego and became an ICF certified leadership coach. I'm using air quotes because coaching, life coach, leadership coach, executive coach, I do all of those. And at its core, it's all the same.
Mm. Gosh, where to go? What are some of the wins that you're having on that first round of coaching, like before the ICF training and all that? You've started this nonprofit, you're coaching. What are the results that you're seeing or helping, or like what's the thing that you're like, does that make sense? Does that question make sense?
Yes, yes, it absolutely makes sense. So in the nonprofit days, I wasn't coaching. I was an operator. We were building it. My business partner was certified as a coach, so he was coaching. I wanted to get certified, but we only worked with ICF certified coaches. So in that time, I started to see what coaching could do for other people. I saw what it could do for me. I worked with a coach for the first time, and the things that we were able to make progress on, move the needle on with these students was amazing. After our pilot program, which was 1 semester, we were able to increase a student's sense of leadership identity, growth mindset, resilience, leadership, all of these things that high school students, you're thinking from meeting with a coach that can really help. And statistically significant results came out of that. And that was just the
Mm.
beginning. So I saw the power of it. And then selfishly, I saw how I wanted to be in the coaching seat, getting to have these interactions.
I love the statistically significant results. So good. Another way of saying that, that's kind of like saying we tested, we were testing or we were implementing these coaching regimes, parameters, whatever systems, and we could measure the change. So there was with results without, results with, and they were statistically significant. Yeah, that's a good way to say that.
Yes.
Yeah. And so tell me, what were some of the statistically significant changes?
Those things like growth mindset, leadership identity, in terms of psychology, that's how you do these kinds of studies. is you have
Okay.
different things called scales, and those were what we were measuring. And you can show that someone moves from, say, a 1 to a 5 on the resilience scale. And it's through a questionnaire. And we had people on our board that worked at Rice University. And so the whole thing was actually like I can't remember what it's called. I think it's the IRB, Internal Review Board. Like the whole thing was legit. Like we did a real study.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for going a little bit deep on that. Um, how you're hitting bottom as an auditor, how's that manifesting in your life?
Oh, I
The
love this
pain.
question.
Yeah.
I love this question because most of my clients, they fall into two buckets. It's people who are around my age, late 20s, who have already found out early on that money isn't going to buy them happiness. It's not going to give them the life they want. So they need to do something else. And then a lot of the clients I work with are middle-aged. They're having a middle-aged existential life crisis. They have the house and the family and the kids, or maybe their kids went to school and now they're like, now what? And I'm tying this back to the question because by the time I was 25, I had had two full-blown existential life crises. And I tell people that, well, one, I'm an old soul. I've always been an old soul. I'm convinced that I was a old Japanese monk in a past life, but I can coach people so much older than me and really relate to them because I've been through those two full-blown life crises. And the first one happened when I was an auditor. So how that was manifesting was that I was so miserable that my brain, my mind was like, we got to do something about this. We got to create some levity, some lightness to the situation. Otherwise, we're going to be full blown clinically depressed in a few weeks. And so I started having these things that I coined laugh attacks. I would be in the office, deep in an Excel spreadsheet, doing an audit. And I would just, my friend would make a joke. I mean, he was a funny dude, but I would just lose it. I would start laughing and I wouldn't be able to stop. And then I would be laughing so hard that I was crying. And it was literally my body saying, we need to make fun of this. We need to make light of this. Otherwise, we're going to be depressed. And so that was the first indications that, wow, I need to get out of here. And then fast forward a year and a half to when I'm in my next finance job, the symptoms were just feeling so empty. I was trying to fill the void inside of myself with Lululemon dress pants and fancy dress shirts and every single fancy health supplement you can get from Amazon, like all of the coffee alternatives and the athletic greens and the mud water, and just trying to fill the hole inside of me with something else that I knew needed to come from feeling like my life had a purpose, feeling like I was making a difference in the world and with other people.
Mm. The mud coffee will solve my problem. The bone broth. If I combine the
Exactly.
bone broth with the mud water,
I just need a better morning routine. I need to optimize my supplements.
oh my gosh. Um, what's going on with your relationships at this point? Are you cynically looking around? Are you in your own little bubble? I mean, you said you had that one coworker who would trigger your sob cry or sob laughing or whatever. Um, yeah, is it what's going on with your relationships? Are you thriving in your relationships or no? Are you what's happening there?
My relationships are fantastic. And I'm really blessed because I have people like Vinny, who's my co-host on the podcast. And man, we tell each other every day that we love each other, that we couldn't do this without each other. And it's so much fun talking to him because we both think in terms of possibility instead of
Mm,
reality. And so every day we're like, this is just the beginning. I can't wait till we're 65, still recording the podcast, telling people to just get started already.
yeah.
And I have really intentionally surrounded myself with people who are of that mindset. A lot of them tend to be entrepreneurs. A lot of them tend to be what I call dreamers, people who are up for everything and they think in terms of possibility and what could go right instead of immediately going to what could go wrong. And
Mm,
my relationships are good now. There was definitely a period of time when I was miserable and then lost and then trying to figure out what was next that things got hard, especially as I stopped drinking alcohol. I stopped partying like so many of my friends that I made because we both drank alcohol together, it was tough. And still working through some of that in terms of finding my people and my community that I want to surround myself with, especially in San Diego. A lot of them are I've met through LinkedIn and our other places, but really trying to build that community and that tribe. And that's why I love Feel Good Friday and meeting people like yourself.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And that was part of my question was how are your relationships back at that sort of the existential crisis points in your life? It's like, yeah, who am I hanging out with and are they supportive of me? Or it's so oftentimes for me, I'll realize I'll be like, this person is not good for me or whatever, but I'm like, they're just really just a manifestation of my thoughts. And it's, I'm the problem, not necessarily them, right?
Yeah.
And and then as I make those changes and clean up my thoughts almost, not almost, as I make those changes, personal changes and clean up my thoughts, those relationships almost just evaporate like it was just a dream almost. I don't know if that makes sense or
That makes a lot of sense. I heard someone talking about on a podcast, I can't remember who it was, but that your external world is just a projection of your internal landscape. And I love that because it seems to be true in that if your internal landscape is messed up, if it's not fun and it's not a good time in there, you can be anywhere. You can be on a yacht with Beyonce and you still won't be happy. But it's really if your inner landscape is great and you're content and you're peaceful and you're grateful and you're feeling abundant, then that the outer world seems to reflect that.
yeah, I love that. I think it's a bold move as well that speaks to what you're doing about taking this bold action of being willing to cut loose of the old and perhaps be alone for a little bit and feel isolated and you know give space for the new to come in, the new people. I think in Western culture, we're so, especially these days, compulsively needing stimulation. It's like, oh my gosh, if I don't have a circle of people around me, what am I going to do? You know, does that resonate at all? Or,
That resonates a ton. Two things I'll say to that is first, you read about it in all of the personal development, self-help books that at some point, if you embark on living a life true to yourself, that you will probably lose friends. You'll cut ties with people who liked and knew the old version of you that wasn't actually you as you strive to be this new version of yourself. And you read about it in the books and you're like, yeah, 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 whatever. It is so hard in your real life when those are your childhood friends, people you went to high school with. And I'm still navigating that. There's certain people in my life that maybe we don't see eye to eye on things, but the second point of what I was going to share is that it is lonely. There was and still are times where you have to choose. That's very strong language. You get to choose to be alone instead of settling for hanging out with someone who isn't going to fill your cup or being in a relationship just to be in a relationship instead of being alone and having those lonely Saturday nights where everyone else is with their significant other and you're just sitting there. I did 6 years, Misha, by myself between the relationship I'm in now, which is fantastic, and my last girlfriend before that. I did 6 years of figuring out who I wanted to become as a man, as a human, figuring out what I wanted to do with my life, how I wanted to show up as a partner. And there were a lot of nights on the weekends where it was lonely. I remember one time I was living with my best friend and his girlfriend, and they came over, she came over, and we watched Hitch, that movie with Will Smith. And it was great. It was like around sunset. We're watching the movie, and they're like, all right, we got to go. We're going to a date night. And there's like 30 minutes left in the movie. And they leave. The movie ends. It's dark outside. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am so alone right now.
it is so good, but
In a
so,
way,
huh?
in a way that you only feel that at the end of a rom-com, right?
Oh my God. When the couple just left to go do their date thing. Oh my God.
And I'm here on the couch finishing Hitch by myself on a Saturday night. Sick.
That is so. Amazing. Oh, I had this great question and I lost it. Um, capable of more. You said when you were back in the, sort of that existential crisis one or two, you realized you were capable of more. And I want you to speak to what capable of more meant to you in that moment. And then there's the obvious of, I think, so many people who still think that money, success, power, fame are the answers. Uh, capable of more is like more money, more of those things, but capable of more obviously meant something else. Yeah. Did I frame that right? Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, capable of more meant capable of having a positive impact in other people's lives and doing something that felt significant. I remember being in meetings at my finance job, and as I mentioned, it was in real estate. So I'd be in a meeting and we would be arguing about whether we're going to put in Best Buy in suite 222 at $1.60 per square foot or $1.62. And people are livid and they're getting into it. And in my mind, I'm just like, how can you possibly care about this? Like, is this real? And you actually are passionate about this, or is this all a facade? And this is fake because we have to be here at this job. And when I say capable of more, if you're listening to this, like you will know deep down if you're capable of more, if you're capable of having an impact. And more maybe isn't the right word. Maybe it's capable of different, capable of making a positive impact in someone else's life. And I knew that in the lane I was in, the only positive impact I was having was on our shareholders and our private equity investors who already had millions of dollars. It just didn't feel meaningful and connected. And I knew that I wanted to do something with people. I was always the guy at lunch talking about book recommendations and, hey, I just listened to this podcast, or I just went to a Wim Hof ice bath retreat this past weekend. You want to hear about it? Like I was always doing that kind of stuff. And I felt like that was more of me. That was my essence versus I wasn't talking about like, oh, I'm capable of making more money. I'm capable of having a shinier job title.
Yeah. Quick. Cal Poly, which is where's Cal Poly again? What is it?
San Luis Obispo, it's like right on the central coast. It's about halfway between LA and San Francisco.
It's beautiful up there too, right? Like it's insane.
It's great, beautiful.
Cal Poly, that's like a legit school. Like that's top whatever, right? Top, I don't know, 100 or something. Like I hear Cal Poly and I'm like, oh yeah, Cal Poly, that's got some prestige behind it. Or yeah, am I
It's
saying
a
that right?
it's a great school. It was hard to get into. I was out of state, so it was really hard to get into. I actually didn't
Mm,
think I was going to get into it, and then I did, which was awesome. We would joke and call it Harvard of the West, but everyone says that it's not like I mean, I think the UC schools, Berkeley, UCLA, USC, I think those are much harder to get into, probably more prestigious, but it was a very solid school, and because I had that sadistic finance teacher, Gorman, he was the best teacher I've ever had in my whole life. He
yeah.
I probably would have been an engineer if he taught engineering. I probably would have been an artist if he was teaching art. I just really wanted to make him proud. And I'm very analytical. I loved the numbers and the challenge. That's another thing that has come up is that I partially went the finance route because it's so challenging. I love challenging myself. I love seeing what I'm made of, what I'm capable of.
Yeah, it's good. I think about I wish I could remember the guy's name, but his first name was Dean. I got a finance degree back in the day out of Montana State University in Montana, Bozeman. Let me just say that people go, where did you go to school? I'll say MSU, and everybody thinks like Michigan State. I'm like, no, Montana State. I have fun with that. But we did all the finance program was literally built around farming, cows, cow metrics. Um, what was I going to say? Like hay metrics, all this crazy stuff. And I was like, it's not what I signed up for. But anyway,
Yeah.
I had a finance teacher named Dean who was so I wish I could remember his last name. So impactful. And I hated him at first. I was like, you, and then turns out he was that inspiration for that time. So I can definitely relate to that teacher or that professor, right?
Yeah.
Um, you asked the girlfriend at the time, you're like, hey, uh, you're super cute. You probably got a boyfriend, but here's my number. Did that lead to conversation right there, or did you walk away and she called you, or what were the next? Yeah,
Yeah, so I had been doing this thing where I was leaving my phone in the car. I was trying to have my phone on me less times when I'm just out in the world. And I was at breakfast with a friend. And when we sat down to start eating, I made eye contact with my now girlfriend from across the room. And I was like, wow, I just made eye contact with this woman and it was electric. I don't know what's going on, but if she's still here by the time I finish my breakfast, I have to go say something. And this was right at the beginning of Live a Story Worth Telling. When I was starting to use that as my mantra, I was like, I got to do it. I got to do it. I have no choice. And so we finished breakfast and she was still there. I asked the waiter for a receipt and a pen and I wrote my name. I just wrote Gregory. And then I wrote my phone number on the back of the receipt. And I walked over to their table and she was sitting. There was a guy across from her and another girl. And part of me was like, oh, geez, is this her boyfriend? I might get punched in the face right now, but I wasn't really getting boyfriend vibes. And so I walked up and he was actually talking and I didn't want to just be an asshole and try and talk over him. So I looked at him. I was like, hey, man, so sorry. Can I interrupt for a moment? And he just looks at me and he's like, yeah. And then that's when I turned to Mika, the name of my girlfriend, and I said the things I said. And I just slid the receipt across the table with my number on it. And as I was saying, but you probably have a boyfriend, she's like, I don't have a boyfriend. She said it really quickly. And then I was just like, started laughing. I was just like, great. Have a nice day, guys. And I walked away because it was like in the middle of the restaurant. Like there were other people watching. This wasn't like I'm going to stand here and try and make small talk. So I got out of there pretty quickly. Like I said, I kind of blacked out. I don't remember most of it. And she ended up texting me later that night. And then we went on a beach walk. The restaurant, have you been to Naked Cafe in Solana Beach?
yeah, yeah. So
So
beautiful.
that's
Yeah.
where it happened. We met up a couple days later to go on a beach walk in Fletcher Cove, and the rest is history.
Hey, uh, how about the inspiration that you did that and you interrupted the other guy gracefully, by the way, love it.
Not her
But that
boyfriend, we found out.
not her boyfriend, yes, not her boyfriend. But then sort of miracle or inspiration number two is that she followed up. How cool is that? She was inspired to be like, yeah, what the heck? That was cool, you know?
It only happened because she ended up texting me, so I was very excited.
So did she say anything? How did it, and real quick, 30 seconds or less, she texted you and said that was bold or what? How'd it go?
She said something great. We had really witty banter from the beginning. She texted me saying, "This is striped sweater girl from the cafe. My name is Mika, pronounced," and she like spelled it because her name looks like it would be pronounced Micah.
Yeah. Cool,
So
man.
it was
Yeah,
great.
good, amazing, so good. The Instagram poll post, are you recording that when you knock on the door so you have somebody with you, or you're like, hey, you've got your camera and the guy opens the door and you're like, hey, I'm doing an Instagram thing. I'd love to cannonball in your pool, or does that make
S-
sense? Or
It
yeah,
does. It does.
yeah,
So short answer, no. I
okay,
wasn't filming them in the beginning. I would film myself on the way to go do it. So I took a little video. I was like on my way to go ask a stranger if I can cannonball in a swimming pool. And then I knocked on his door, didn't have my phone. I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to like intrude into someone's private space and be like filming and you can probably see inside their house. I just really didn't want to deal with all of that. And I felt like it'd be kind of rude. So the whole interaction where I was asking him and him saying yes wasn't filmed. And then he's like, "Yeah, meet me around back. Like, let's do this." When we got around back, I was like, "Hey, you mind just recording a little video of me jumping in the pool?" And so he did that. I had the piece before and the piece after, and then I just like pieced it together with me saying like, "This is what happened in between," and it was really cool. And again, like the whole 100-day challenge, I took videos of some of the ones, other ones I didn't. I was constantly navigating between feeling like this is super cool to film and I want to share it, and also wanting to respect people's privacy and just being like, it feels kind of icky to be filming people. So it was not a cohesive strategy.
I love it. That's so good. Messy action. I'm very much in the space of the best is the enemy of more than good enough.
Yes.
I'm just like, let's go. Let's take some action. I know one thing I was going to say earlier was, um, I definitely myself shifted into a mindset of just saying yes. Yes. You want to do something? Yes. And then if it's not meant to be, it usually falls apart, right? It's just so easy to say yes and let it not happen than say no and fight and da 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 da. It's like, yeah, let's do it. And then the universe will be like, great, it happens or wasn't meant to be. I see
Yes.
that a lot. Um, Gosh, I just had the other thought and it slipped away. So, what are some of, as you're working with people out here, doing your coaching, helping people take bold action, what, uh, check the box, you know, live with purpose. What are some people's dreams? What are some of the dreams that you're hearing?
Mm, I love this question. So many of the dreams are similar. There are some themes that I will share. I tend to attract and work with people who want to help others, which I love. I think deep down, most of us want to make a difference. We want to help other people achieve something. I think that goes back to how we said in the beginning, there's 100,000 million coaches. It's it's good. It's good that there's so many, and I
Yeah.
appreciate it because it shows that people really want to help. So the dream is usually some sort of helping someone, providing something that's going to change someone's life. And then another theme that's hilarious is everyone wants a farm, especially now. Like everyone wants some land where they can have some animals, they can build a little community and have friends come out. So that seems to be a big part of the dream. And then it's usually, I'm kind of going two different routes because for some people, it's very career centric. And when people meet me, a lot of people, given my backstory, they think that I only coach people to quit a job and do their own thing. But a lot of my clients have had a job they didn't like and found a better job that's way more aligned, or they didn't have a job and then they found a job they loved. And I helped coach them through that process. So for some people, the dream is just moving up the ladder, but the right ladder. It's the job, the company, the organization. I have a client who works for the World Food Program right now, and he is built for that. Like his dream is to connect farmers with the markets that they need to create food for in foreign countries. And he's just so passionate about it. And so that's one thing that I love is that people can be passionate about anything and I'll get excited about it. So the
Yeah.
dream, the dream usually, let me say that a little more concisely. It usually has to do with helping someone or entertaining someone or giving them something. Another one of my clients, he's a professional haunter. Never knew what that meant. He has a haunt in the woods in New Hampshire, which is like this like haunted house live experience where he hires people, paid actors, he builds stuff that animatronics that come out of the bushes and scare people. And his passion, his dream is Halloween and finding and his dream is Halloween and he's one of the most talented people I've ever met. He can sing and compose his own music. He's done stand-up comedy. He's an artist. He can draw. He can build things with his hands. And so his dream is bringing all of that together for this special, entertaining, exciting experience. And I love that because it's so him. It's not,
Mm.
I never would have thought I'm helping someone create some Halloween extravaganza, but it's his dream and it's so meaningful getting to help.
Yeah. That's awesome. Um, you're speaking to people that are I'm guessing most people are coming to you and they're in some state of conflict. Um, and I do want to say too, I know it's easy to poke at like people who want to be successful or make money or have fame. And it's like, hey, if that is your driver, God bless, right? Like might not be mine, or I do want a certain amount of fame or whatever. But like it's easy to just like knock that. But it's like, hey, if that's your center and that's pulling you forward and that's how you're of service or whatever. I don't know. God bless. It's easy to knock it, but does that make sense or does that resonate at all? Or
It does. And what's coming up for me in what you're sharing is that it's harder to poke or agitate someone to take action on their dream than it is if they're like, I want this amount of money, I want this amount of prestige and power. And that's actually why I've shifted my messaging. The messaging used to be all around living a story worth telling and following your dreams. And what I realized is that that's the solution. That's
Yeah.
not the problem. That's the solution to the problem, which is money can't buy the things you want most. And so that's why I've shifted the front end messaging, how I introduce myself, what I talk about in the beginning, to money can't buy happiness. I work with people who have found out that that is true, and I help them get the things they want. And the method is going after your dreams.
Yeah. So good. So you're finding people, I'm guessing, that are in some state of conflict, and what stops that person like internally? They're scared, or what are people gonna think, or like what's the yeah.
I think that the thing that stops everyone is fear. I truly believe that everything we want in life is on the other side of fear, and fear manifests in so many different ways. It's fear of what to do next, fear of not having enough, fear of the insecurity of what other people will think. And so the things that get people stuck, and yes, you are correct in that the people who come to me are in a state of discomfort because they're feeling empty inside. They might just be feeling empty, period. Like I'm going through my life on autopilot. Nothing I do makes me feel anything. And I just want to feel alive. I just want to
Yeah.
feel alive.
Yeah.
And that's what they are experiencing. And the things, like I said, getting in the way is fear. And so many realistic things like I have kids, I can't just change my job. I have a mortgage. I'm 30 years into this career. Can I really do something different? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, I guess too, the someone comes to you and you help paint a vision, and maybe they're thinking too far ahead too, right? It's like you see this person and you're like, oh my God, I could help you transform your life, right? And they're like, yeah, but uh I can't quit my job. And you're like, well, let's just start with the dream maybe, or dial it back a little bit, or does that make sense? You know?
That is exactly it. And it's what is the smallest possible step we can take to get started, to get in motion? Because as I mentioned, the universe rewards bold action. And when you're taking action, crazy things will happen. This is my favorite part. This is why I've leaned so heavily on this as my coaching philosophy is in my early days, I would try and coach someone and they would be stuck and we'd do mindset work. We'd work on beliefs. We'd work on all these things and they would still just be stuck. And now I'm like, you're stuck. Great. You can still move your body through physical space to go do this thing. Because when you take consistent bold action, I call it moving from linear progress, where 1 + 1 = 2, to exponential progress, 1 + 1 = 12 or 15. There's so many stories. And if you're listening, think about this for a second. The stories that we love to hear the most are the ones that don't make any sense, that are so outrageous and serendipitous and synchronistic. It's the story where something unexplainable happens. And one of my favorite stories is one I heard recently. Have you ever heard of Paul Brunson?
Yeah, no. I I'm not sure. Tell me.
You might be thinking of Russell Brunson, their last
Yes,
name.
of course.
I had never heard of this man, Paul. I don't know much about him, but he became a celebrity dating coach, matchmaker. And he got started. No one knew who he was. He was coaching a few clients for free around matchmaking, finding your right person, whatever. And it just so happens that he has 23 YouTube subscribers. One of his YouTube subscribers happens to be a woman who works for Oprah's magazine. And she's on Oprah's private jet with Oprah one day. And Oprah is sitting a few rows back speaking to someone and goes, You know, I really want to start a show about dating, but I don't want it to be someone who's well known. I want a fresh voice in the dating world. And this woman turns around and she goes, I think I have an idea. Have you heard of Paul Brunson? Oprah's like, No, of course not. He has 23 YouTube subscribers. And this woman shows Oprah Paul Brunson. And Oprah's like, That's him. That's our person. And he has a show with Oprah now. And it's those moments where you're putting in the work, you're taking bold action from the outside looking in, nothing has happened yet. You only have 23 YouTube subscribers. But because you're in the arena, because you're actually taking action, this magic happens. And I totally believe, I don't know if I believe in a higher power or what, but I do believe that there's this magic that happens when we are willing to get outside our comfort zone and things like that happen.
You know what's so awesome about that too? And you just got me thinking, it's like, you know, as I am building, my podcast guest speaking business, I'll have these little wins. And they feel like wins that as I'm taking the messy action, the wins feel like that Oprah moment, right? And then as I gain momentum and keep, plowing forward through the ups and downs and the wins get bigger, they still have that same feeling, right? So it's like, oh, that's so powerful. I can have that Oprah moment the first time somebody buys something off a webinar or something, right? Like, and the wins just get bigger, but the feeling of that win or validation or success or whatever uh is the same. Does that make sense? Am I saying that right? Yeah.
Yes. And I feel like there's no better feeling for me than feeling like you're the main character in a movie. Like things are happening, you're in the pocket, you're in flow. And for me, it's always the two S's, synchronicity and serendipity. That's how I was introduced to my business partner who I started the nonprofit with. I had a stranger on Facebook put us in a group chat and say, "Hey, neither of you have met me, but I've read what Gregory wrote, I read what Tim wrote. You guys have the same mission and vision. Here you go. You guys need to meet." So like those
Yeah.
moments where again, I'm trying to find a better way to articulate it that they just don't make sense.
Yeah. It's good. Um, I'm assuming that over and above the fear of people just getting started, they're like, bold action, that sounds great, but heck no. Uh, Financially, people go, gosh, is it, I mean, they're scared to invest in themselves. It sounds even funny saying it, but I suppose that's the other thing you hear is like, well, it's too expensive or whatever. And you're like, what? To live your dream? Or I don't know. Talk to that for a minute, maybe.
Yeah, I think a lot about this because even when I'm investing in a coach or a program, and I've invested a lot of money into my own development, for me, the thing that gets in the way is will it work? Will this work?
Mm,
Will it work for me? And I have so much to say about this, but one thing is that you taking the action already works. Like it already checks the box of you doing something and moving forward in a meaningful way. And that's why I'm really trying to create things that are so helpful and so high value at such a low price. Like the thing I shared with you that you'll put in the show notes, the PDF is free. And in it, it invites people to a 3 hour, it's across 3 different days workshop that I lead, which teaches people, it takes them through those 3 steps I talked about. Define your dream, create your commitment, take bold action, and it's $97. It's $97 for 3 hours of time, and you will take more action in a single week than you did all last year. So I'm trying to make the front end of how I can help people and get in their world super cheap and like a no-brainer so that we can just get people moving and get people thinking about their dream.
yeah, I'll put the link. That's amazing. Thank you for that. I will put the link for your next work for your workshop in the show notes as well. So anybody listening, watching, the link for the 100 days of bold action, 100 days of rejection lead magnet, which is all about taking that bold action and these great stories that you have around that and how it's transformed your life or helped transform your life. And then the workshop. Are you sick and tired of letting fear and resistance keep you from achieving your dreams? And you've got your 3-part workshop that define the dream, commit to the dream, take the bold action. Uh, those links will be in the show notes. Um, as I was prowling around your content, you've got all these great stories, or people are just loving what you're doing, giving you great feedback, writing these amazing testimonials. Any stories that jump out for you, or favorite moments that come to the top of your head of people and having breakthroughs in this regard?
So I changed my mind with the last words you said there because there is one story I want to share that highlights what happens when you live a story worth telling. But I do want to speak to real quickly, just I guess it would be called a client success story of I'm working with this person. I can't share that many specifics because confidentiality is so important to coaching, but he's one of my favorite people to talk about because he is so outwardly successful financially, has the job, the shiny title. He's working in a company, an organization that he loves. But he came in and we started talking about how no matter how much he has, he feels like he's never done enough and feels like he never is enough. And I love working with him because I learned so much from it because I for sure struggle with those feelings of inadequacy, of feeling like I've only done enough if I'm so physically exhausted that I can barely make it home from the office. And we did some work around self-love and really peeling back the layers on what does self-love mean? And what if self-love isn't some lofty thing where you have to wake up in the morning and say, I love you, and look in the mirror and all this stuff, but reframing it as you are your only human and you are tasked with taking care of this one person. And maybe self-love doesn't start, as I mentioned, with the affirmations. Maybe it just starts with occasionally giving yourself a pat on the back, occasionally letting yourself do the thing you want to do, go read a book instead of going on a run or being productive. And so that's one of my favorite stories is that just through the work we did together, his whole relationship with himself changed. One of the themes I constantly get is that people's significant others notice. They say, what is going on? What are you doing? So much happier, so much more present, not constantly thinking about themselves. They're able to look at other people and contribute. So that's what I want to say on that. And then I would love to, I know we're coming up on time. Do I have time for one more story?
Absolutely.
Okay. So the experience with my girlfriend was at the genesis of Live a Story Worth Telling. And so was this other story. And the tattoo I have on my arm that says Live a Story Worth Telling, it's in small font and it's facing me. It's a personal reminder so that anytime I'm in that moment where my heart is pounding and I'm scared, I can look down at my arm and just see that live a story worth telling. And then I got to do it. It's a personal reminder. And so I love this story because it started back in 2018 when I was working as an internal auditor, and it ended when I was a coach doing what I loved. So I'm on a flight home back to the Bay Area, and I sit next to this older Polish couple on a flight. And I start chatting with them. I'm sitting next to the man, and we just hit it off. We're talking about exercise, weightlifting, philosophy, meditation. He starts telling me about dancing and how dancing lessons and going dancing with his wife have been such a big part of their relationship success. So the plane is landing, and they say, hey, can we give you some advice from the older generation to the younger? I'm like, heck yeah, super down. They're like, all right, you need to do three things. You need to learn more about this ancient philosophy called Stoicism. It'll really help you. You should start meditating every day, create a meditation practice. And the third thing is take dancing lessons. Your future partner will thank you for it. And I'm like, sweet, these sound great. And they're like, once you finish the lessons, once you finish these three things, reach out to us. And as we're getting off the flight, this man, whose name was Jersey, turns to me and he goes, hey, if you want to learn more about me, you can check out this podcast I just did. And this was before I had a podcast, but I was like, oh, I love podcasts. Like, which one is it? And he texts me the link and it's him on Tim Ferriss. And my jaw just drops, Misha. I'm like, oh my God. I just spent the past 2 hours telling this guy what I do to work out, what I do for my practices. And it turns out that this guy is Jerzy Gregorek. He's a four-time Olympic weightlifting world champion. Him and his wife, Aniela, were the weightlifting coaches at UCLA. He is Tim Ferriss's coach, physical trainer, along with Naval Ravikant, all of these huge heroes that I look up to. And I just sat next to him on the plane and had no idea. So fast forward a few years, I'm living my life. I'm learning about Stoicism. I'm meditating every single day. And I finally take dancing lessons. I'm a terrible dancer. That was the one that was hardest for me to do. But I finally did it. I did it here in San Diego. And I'm like, I did it. I'm done. But I can't email Jersey Gregorick. Like, I don't know his email. He's not going to respond to me. This dude's like both famous and really below the radar. Like, he stays below the radar on purpose. So I'm sitting there thinking about it, and I get a call from my friend, Dane, who's a mentor of mine, and he had actually had Jersey on his podcast. And a week ago, I listened to it a week ago at the time, and I was like, Dane, I love Jersey. I actually met him on a flight one time, like great podcast. And he goes, yeah, I love Jersey too. So much so that we're getting dinner in San Jose on Sunday. Do you want to come? And I live in San Diego. It was Saturday. The dinner's in San Jose the next day. And in that moment, that was when, for the first time in my life, I thought about, okay, I could either say, I'm not going to drive 8 hours to come to dinner with 1 day notice. That's crazy. Or I can live a story worth telling. So I jump in the car the next day. I drive all the way to San Francisco, or San Jose rather. And it's me, Dane, Jersey, and Aniela. And it had been 4 years since I met them. I introduced myself. They didn't recognize me. And about halfway through dinner, things are going great. And I'm like, hey guys, can I tell you a quick story? And they go, yeah, sure. Again, the confused looks I get from people. And I tell them this story about how in 2018, I was on a flight and I sat next to this couple, and they told me that in order to live a fulfilled life, I need to do these three things. Boom, boom, boom. And then I say, and the best part about this story was that that couple on the flight 4 years ago was you guys. And they just look at me and they're like, oh my gosh, it's you. And Yella has tears coming down her face. She's like, I remember you. I don't remember your face, but I remember your energy. And it was, again, I felt like I was in a movie. It was this full circle moment that came through taking bold action and living a story worth telling. And it's those moments that don't make sense. What are the odds? Bringing it back to statistical significance, what are the odds of me getting to go to a private dinner with these two people who are insanely hard to get a hold of 4 years later to tell them that, like in a movie, I did the things that the mentors told me to do?
That is incredible. That is the place to end, but I can't. I always ask this question. That story is so good. I was living it with you. I love it. And how powerful that you're like, all right, I'm done. And then the dominoes fall and it's like, here's dinner. All you got to
That's
do is say yes.
that's why I believe that the universe is benevolent and that it's watching and that it rewards you if you're willing to take action.
So beautiful. This is a good place to hit stop. But before we hit stop, inevitably, whenever I'm on a podcast and I hit stop, I'm like, oh, I meant to say, or I wished I'd said. Anything come to mind that you're like, ooh, I wanted to say, or go ahead.
Hmm. I think the one thing that we didn't touch on that I just love telling people about is step two in those three steps that I take people through in that workshop, which the workshop is called How to Live a Story Worth Telling. It's all about getting people to take bold action. But once you define your dream, it's still really scary. You're still like, how am I going to do this thing? Like, you probably already know the thing that you've been wanting to do. It's a phone call, it's an application, it's going somewhere, it's booking the flight, but it's hard because there's resistance. And so step number two is called create your commitment. And we use something called a commitment device, which is a psychological concept where you take action in the present moment to lock in a desired future action. You do something now to make sure that regardless of how you feel in the future, it's going to happen. So if you wanted to go on that dream vacation, you would buy a non-refundable ticket today to lock it in. Say you wanted to get a new job, you would submit the application today. And so part of the process is creating a commitment device, something to lock it in. And I like trying to make the most outrageous, playful, hilarious commitment devices so that when you take that bold action, which we actually do in the third session, we come together and we take bold action together in real time. It's fun, it's exciting. And one of my favorite examples of a commitment device comes from Victor Hugo. So Victor Hugo wrote The Hunchback of Notre Dame, famous book. But before he wrote it, he had 2 years to write it from his publisher. He spent a year and 6 months goofing off, going out, not writing the book. And so his publisher responds and says, you have 6 months to write this book, which they thought would be impossible. And he realized, I need to do something right now to stop procrastinating. So he used a commitment device. He sold all of his clothes except this, he called it a riding shawl, like a big blanket that he would drape himself in. So he had no clothes. He couldn't go outside, otherwise he'd be embarrassed. So all he had to do was write. So he stayed in his room, draped in a blanket, and wrote furiously for 6 months and finished it.
That's amazing. Quick question. What I have leads to two questions, and we'll hit stop here soon. I know we have to both we have days to get back to, but what is the most perceived benign commitment device that that someone has picked? You know what I mean? Where it's like you're like, yeah, sell all your stuff, burn your clothes, buy
Yeah,
the thing. Yeah. And you're like, someone was like, in your mind, it might have been benign, but for them, it was like the heaviest thing ever. Does that question make sense?
it does. Some of my favorite ones are around relationships with parents, siblings. They're estranged, they haven't talked in a while. A seemingly benign commitment device and bold action is send a text, make the call. Once you press that button, there's no going back. And you're either getting voicemail or you're talking to them. And that's what came to mind when you said that. And I didn't do this on purpose, but it came to me while I was talking about a commitment device is that if you have heard anything during this podcast today that resonated, that something inside of you came alive a little bit, use the commitment device, take action in the present moment, go click on the free download or sign up for the workshop so that you take advantage of this motivation, of this feeling, and you don't let it be fleeting and float away.
I love it. And last question, you come together and with the people in your workshop and you're like, all right, let's all do the thing. So you're constantly doing things. Like, what's the last thing you did? Or give me examples of what you would do with somebody. Does that make sense? What? Yeah.
So everyone, I've been holding these over Zoom. So we don't actually have to be together, but we're on a Zoom call. And then I go, okay, for the next 25 minutes, we're going to put ourselves on mute. We're going to go take bold action, and then we're going to come back together and we're going to spend the rest of the call celebrating it. Like, what'd you do? How are you feeling? What's the result? And then we just get to celebrate each other. The last bold action that I did, is that the question?
Yes.
I'm constantly doing things that scare me. The one that I did on the last workshop I held was it's kind of funny. I've been applying to modeling agencies because I did a modeling gig for my friend's company and we're making this joke. Zoolander is like one of my favorite movies. So now I'm like, I guess I'm a male model now. And just shooting my shot as a joke almost. Like I have this portfolio of pictures just because it's my friend's company and being like, okay, what's going to happen if I submit a headshot here and see? Which
It's so
again is
good.
terrifying because that one too, it's like, okay, if they say no, it actually is about me.
Oh my God. And you are a handsome devil, by the way. Anybody watching, listening, be sure to look up Gregory Russell Benedikt. And oh my gosh, this has been so much fun. Hey, I look forward to being on your podcast. This is great. I'm going to hit stop. We'll say goodbye offline.
Perfect.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Table Rush Talk Show. For resources to help you sell your stuff, go to belove.media/resources. That's belove.media/resources. And be sure to subscribe, comment, 5-star, and share. Thank you again for listening.